Welcome to River Foursquare, where we gather in communities to learn more about Jesus together, ask questions, talk to one another, discuss God's Word. If you are watching this, you can grab some friends or your family, and you can have church right now wherever you are. You can do that easily by just pressing play on the YouTube video, like and subscribe so you don't miss any. And
watch us in HD.
Oh, you can. On a giant screen. That's always interesting. You can do that and learn more about what we do here at riverfoursquare.org by clicking on the Connect tab. If you're in the local Seattle area, you can join our all-community gathering that's happening on June 24th at 6 p.m. at Grace Church in Federal Way. We'd love to have you all come out if you're local and come worship and pray and have communion with us and learn more about Jesus and the different people that attend the communities that are local to the area. And finally, if you're part of River, thank you so much for continuing to support what God is doing through your giving. You can do that at riverfoursquare.org and clicking on the Give tab, or you can text to 84321.
And Jesus, we thank you for today. Thank you for your presence with us. Lord, we don't take lightly that you said wherever two or more are gathered, you are there. So we welcome you here with us right now as we're watching this in communities, that your presence is here. In Jesus' name, amen. So last week we finished up the first part of John chapter 3. Where excuse me, I gotta sneeze. Okay, not sneeze. Okay, I'm good. I did sneeze. Okay. Well, that's no fun to edit out. I won't edit out. It's too hard. Okay. So finishing up the section with Nicodemus, having a conversation with them. And that Jesus is telling Nicodemus the why he came. That God's love cost something. It cost the Son. It cost Jesus' life. And that we have to choose to live in the light, giving up our way and choosing God's way, rather than the darkness, which is not choosing God's way, which is not following that. We have to choose that. That we have to continue to live these nevertheless moments. The moments where we decide, you know what, I'm going to put aside my way because I want God's way. Because that's what matters. That's our why. Choosing God's way. And wrestling with that whole thing. So you want to ask this question?
So how was your week? What kinds of things did God show up in your week for you? Did you have any struggles? Did you have anything that you are waiting for him to show up with that you've had to say, nevertheless, God, here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to still wait on you, seek you, see you. What was that like for you? How's it going? Talk with your community about that. So if you've ever spent time with a group of kids for any length of time, you'll probably have encountered some scenarios that might go a little bit like this. Hey, Andrew, it's not fair. Everyone's playing with Joe. He has a new race car, and no one will play
Joe
with
is
me.
cooler than you.
I know, but no one's playing with me, and it's not fair. How come they come to my house and all they want to do is play with Joe, and no one will play with me?
Because
I
Joe's
just don't
cool.
like it. Or if you're a parent, my brother has more ice cream than I do. It's not fair.
That's a real thing.
He has more cake. His piece is bigger. He got to do the TV longer. It's my turn to do this, right? Kids are very big on letting people know when things are not working out the way that they think they should, that's promoting their wants, their wishes, their selfish desires. And we as adults, as much as we might like to say, that whole jealousy feeling tends to rear its ugly head for us too.
Looks different.
And it looks a little bit different, but it still exists. And as we get into what John the Baptist, or what John's talking about, he's going to pull us out of the story of Nicodemus, and we've now moved into a new section where he's going to bring us to a discussion of Jesus and John are now both doing ministry at the same time. Jesus is in one part of the Judea area, and John and his followers are over. John the Baptist, not his last name, as Andrew likes to remind us all. He is off in another area where they're not quite sure where that is. Like, they've pinpointed a lot of the things in the Bible, but this is kind of in some place where there's a lot of springs of water because John baptizes people, so he needs a water source. So they're somewhere hanging out there. We're going to pick up here in John chapter 3, verse 22 through 36. After this, Jesus and his disciples, so after they were hanging out in the time with Nicodemus and all that conversation, this is where we pick up. So Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and Jesus remained there with them and was baptizing. John also was baptizing at Aenon near Siloam, because water was plentiful there, and people were coming and being baptized, for John had not yet been put in prison. Now a discussion arose between some of John's disciples and a Jew over purification. And they came to John and said to him, Rabbi, he who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you bore witness, look, he's baptizing and everyone's going to him. And John answered, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it's given to him from heaven. You yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him. The one who is the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease. He who comes from above is above all. He who is of the earth belongs to the earth and speaks in an earthly way. He who comes from heaven is above all, and he bears witness to what he has seen and heard, yet no one receives his testimony. Whoever receives his testimony sets a seal to this, that God is true. For he whom God has sent utters the words of God, for he gives the Spirit without measure. The Father loves the Son, and has given all things into his hand, and whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever does not obey the Son shall not see the life, but the wrath of God remains on him. So Jesus is off baptizing people. The disciples of John the Baptist have a discussion with the Jew because they're Pharisees, right? The Pharisees are coming out, they're asking questions. The Jewish people had a lot of purification water rituals. And so they were this guy probably came to them trying to understand what is happening. And then he probably brought up the fact that, hey, this other guy, Jesus, he's also baptizing.
As the disciples were.
Right, the disciples were. And so they're having this conversation, this Jew man and the disciples, and the disciples learn that Jesus is getting a crowd. Somehow in this conversation, they learn that Jesus is doing the same thing that they're doing, and this crowd is growing, and people are starting to want to know more about where Jesus is and what he's doing.
The crowd's shifting from John the Baptist, who was drawing a crowd, and it's shifting to Jesus.
Yeah, and so we see jealousy at its finest, right? How come this he's getting all the credit? All of our people are leaving. What's going to happen to us?
We did all the hard work.
We did all this hard work. All these things are going on. And so John just looks at him, right? I'm sure. He's like, come on, guys. Have you not heard what I've been saying to you? I'm not the Christ. I'm the one who's saying, prepare the way of the Lord. If you read in another spot, he says, there's a voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. I am here to prepare the way for Jesus. Did you not hear anything that I've said to you? I have to decrease so he can increase. So Jesus can be the center, because that's not me. Right?
He's the opening act. He is the primary performer.
Yeah. And so he goes on this long explanation. We'll cover the second half of it next week, but I want to focus this week on the fact that John, he explains to his people, he's like, you guys have to get this. Just because Jesus is gaining followers, that's what we wanted. We are here to prepare the way, to send people to him. That's our job. And that's opposite of what we see a lot in our world. And even if we look back into the Bible, jealousy, that desire to be the first, the one known, to be part of the in thing,
to be better
than someone else, has been the story of time. We go back again, Genesis, right? Here's Eve. Why did she eat the fruit? Well, it's because Satan came to her and told her it would make her be like God, that God had something she didn't have. And if she did this, then she would have the same things that God had. It would increase her status and her abilities. Genesis 3:5, for God knows, Satan speaking to her, that when you eat of this fruit, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil, right? It was about her being better, her having a bigger thing than God. Cain and Abel in Genesis 4, just shortly after that. They're Adam and Eve's kids, right? And God says, it's time to bring a sacrifice to me. You guys need to come and bring an offering to remind yourselves that I'm God and you're not. So Abel listens to what God says. He brings the right kind of offering, and Cain does his own thing. And when he gets there, God's like, I accept Abel's offering. Cain, I'm sorry, you missed the mark. And Cain gets angry. Why? Because his brother gets recognition and he doesn't. And it gets to the point he's so angry and so jealous over this that he actually kills his brother, right? The first murder that we have record of. And we move further on. There is story after story after story. And even to and important enough that in the 10 Commandments is that thou shalt not covet, right? That fancy word, covet. Thou shalt not want your neighbor's stuff, wife. I mean, God lists all the things.
He lists all the stuff.
All the things, right? All the things that we can tend to be jealous over, he lists in that verse. And get into Saul and David, right? There's a huge, we talked about that one when we talked about the life of David. Here's Saul. He's king. He's got all this stuff. He is in charge, and he's threatened by this little shepherd guy, David, that comes in because now everybody wants to follow David, and they're singing David's praises instead of his. And that makes him so angry again that he tries to kill David multiple times and spends years trying to kill David, all because he was decreasing and David was increasing in popularity. And there's so many more. And I'm sure if you look at your life and you look at the people around you,
you have your own
stories, right? Of situations where human beings want to be better than someone else because it's in our sin nature now. Ever since we learned what the knowledge of good and evil is, ever since we entered into that weight of sin, that contract of yuck, right? We are looking, if we don't have Jesus in our lives, looking for ways to increase our power, our positions, our wealth, to be better, right? And John's disciples found out that Jesus' disciples are taking over their leader's position as the chief baptizers, right?
They've been demoted.
We were baptizers. That's our job. And we do know, I just want to point out there, it does say in that verse that Jesus was baptizing, but a little bit later it says Jesus was not doing the actual baptizing, his disciples were. So here's disciples of another follower guy, are like, here they're doing the same thing that we're doing, and everybody's going to them. They've got the best cake, or they made a better pie, or
they had better water.
They have better water, or they got a fancier church sound system.
They had like white robes and stuff. Not fancy. Well, you did.
Right? So their church is cooler than mine. Right? All of these things are just writhing in them. And they're questioning who they are. Right? It's making them, what's going to happen to us? If everybody's going there, we're going to be out of business. What does this look like? What does this mean? What are they going to do? We're leaving that cliffhanger. I'm going to ask you guys a question.
You gave a cliffhanger?
I did. These guys are rivals, right? In their mind, they're rivals. Their gang is getting beaten by this other gang.
Wait, is this the...
It's not West Side Story.
The Jets versus the Sharks? Thank you, studio team. Is it like Jets versus... Are they going to have a dance battle?
That's what they're feeling like. What are we going to do to fix this, right? And have you ever had a rival for something? Have you ever been in a situation like that where you're part of one group and another group, or by yourself and another person, and you're kind of feeling like there's a battle over your influence or your position or your thing or whatever that looks like? Have you ever been in that type of a situation? Talk about that. How did it get resolved? Did it get resolved? Are you still in that battle? Is there still competition? Talk about that. What is that like? So here's John, right? His disciples freaking out.
Oh, you're picking up
Picking
from
back
the
up,
cliffhanger.
right?
Carry
Picking
on.
up from the cliffhanger. And John responds very kindly, but very firmly. No one can give you anything unless it's given from heaven. Okay? I have told you that I am not the Christ. He then goes on to talk to them that he's like the best man at the wedding. Here, the bridegroom comes in. Remember, in that culture, we talked a little bit about the wedding culture. The bridegroom shows up at an unannounced time, like he just shows up with all his people and comes in. And the best man's there, and he's prepared everything and ready to bring the bride to the bridegroom. That's one of his jobs, and to make sure everything runs smoothly. And John's like, that's me. I'm the best man. I'm not the bridegroom.
I'm not the
You guys
hero.
are not the hero in this story. And he points out to them, he goes, my joy is now complete. I'm so excited that this is happening. This is what I wanted. I must decrease so Jesus can increase. And if that means I'm out of the picture, so be it. That's what's supposed to happen.
He's calling it a good day at the office.
Exactly. And that's the opposite of so much of what we see today. Most of the world is centered around a better job. I need a better house. I need better stuff. I need more followers, right? Social media, right? I need more
like
influence.
and subscribe. Okay.
Right? More. The more I'm famous, the more I build my brand, the more I do all these things. And there's nothing wrong with improving your state in life. There's nothing wrong with earning a good income. There is nothing wrong with advancing in your career, because the people that have wealth, they can help more people, right? Our world, as silly as it is, it revolves around something called currency and whatever that looks like in your culture. And with it, you have influence and power, and you can change things. You can make a difference in people's lives. So go for it. If that's your calling and that's what God's called you to do it. But when it becomes your obsession, and when your focus is building wealth for yourself, that's when there's the problem, right? And so what happens, though, because it does happen to people, if all of that goes away, our job, all of the things, it's just gone, and we've been demoted, decreased, where do we stand? If we have not put our wealth and our hope and our foundation upon our relationship with Jesus and allowed him to increase in our life, those things devastate us. That's where people end up in depression and mental health things and all of this horrible stuff, because they've allowed the things to be their source and not Jesus, and not letting him increase in that. And John's disciples, they thought having more followers was important. They knew they were doing a good thing, right? We're doing a good thing. We're preparing the way for Jesus. We've believed the truth. We've accepted the words of God. We've been baptized. We're partnering with John to change the world, right? And now, where do I fit? But John understood that God's Zoe life is an upside down world. We've talked about that a little bit. It's not the way that as human beings in our sin nature would ever plan things, right? They didn't expect Jesus to come and be killed in order to save them. They thought he was going to come in and destroy everything and restore their status as humans. But that is what the Zoe life is about. It is saying less of me, more of Jesus. John didn't want fame for himself. The only reason why he wanted people to listen to him is so that he could point them to Jesus. He was not seeking control. He was not seeking to be in charge. He was wanting to be more like God. He wanted people to fall in love with Jesus. He wanted people to have that eternal life, that Jesus was God. And it wasn't about them anymore. It was about living that surrendered life, right? That life to God, and show people the way to find that Zoe life with Jesus. So can you ask that question?
Yes. Are you verklempt?
I am in need of a drink of water.
John's got the best water. Anyway, so I've been told. So here's a question for us to talk about in our communities is, do you fight the impulse for more of the world's stuff over God's plans? That wrestling between, I want to do this or I want to have this, and God's like, no, you need to go do this. And it's not that we can't have nice things. That's not it. But the point of it is we can't want those things more than the things that God is calling us to. Because oftentimes you serve God, God will bless you. Scripture is full of that. But it's the one in desire that leads us into trouble. So how do you deal with that? How do you process all that? Let's talk about that in our communities.
So surrender in an upside down world, right? We've talked about that a lot. It's really the key to everything. We have to do things God's way. It's different. It's not the normal path that people are called on. We lead by being servants. It says that in Matthew 9:35, that the servant of all, right? We're called to be great in God's kingdom. You have to be a servant. You have to look for people. We love people when they despitefully use us, that big church word, right? Spite is a really nasty kind of word, right? You do something to spite someone. That means you're purposely doing something to hurt them, to make them look bad. And that's not what God's called us to do, but it happens. But Luke 6:27-28 says, "But to you who are listening, I say," and this is Jesus talking, "love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you." Oh, that's the hardest. I think it's one of the hardest verses to live out, right? Because when people do wrong things to us, we want to react. But we have to listen to the voice of the Spirit. We have to do and respond the way He's called us to. Ephesians 5:2 says, "And walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave Himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." An offering is something that you give freely.
It's a choice.
But it's often, and a sacrifice is things we talk about, what do you sacrifice? Well, you're sacrificing of your will, your way, doing it the way that you think it should be done, and putting aside your selfish behaviors and desires, that jealous stuff, and saying, "God, I'm going to do it like you want." Looking out for others, supporting the people that you work with, supporting your family, building teamwork, inspiring people around you to be better, right? Build them up with your words. Find the good in them, even in the midst of really icky, hard people to be around. Ask God to show you what is something in their life that they're really good at, and start to build them up in that so that they can begin to understand their self-worth. Because a lot of times people hurt other people because they don't feel good about themselves, right? The disciples were angry with John and all that was happening because they were scared about what was coming.
They lost their place.
They lost their place. And so they reacted. And John reminded them, nope, we don't work in the same thing. We lead by example. We were watching this competition survival show, which the show's premise usually is people are just out in the woods, and it's who can make it the number of days.
Can you survive?
Can you survive? And then they decided to take all the people that have been on the show for the last 10 years,
make it a game show.
Top people, make it a game show. So there's a prize at the end now. It's not just survive, but you actually get a prize. And it's interesting watching one of the characters who in the other shows actually has been a bit of a selfish guy, right? He's not the one. He's going to make sure he lasts longer because he has the stuff he needs, and he's not going to share if that risk is going to make someone else, him not be able to make it. And so now that it's a game, he went out and he gathered, they had these little cache locations of stuff to help you survive.
Weapons and
tools and things to make it. So he went and gathered as many as he could, as fast as he could, and he had a surplus. Meanwhile, other people are finding surpluses of things, and they're sharing with one another, and they're like, hey, they're fellow competitors, right? The people that could end up stealing the final prize at the end if they do well. But they're like, hey, we have an extra one of these. You can borrow it. We have this. You can have, they found some meat. They shared it with everybody. And this guy, he's like, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to find somebody to trade and bargain with. And he is all about himself. And watching the difference in the people and how they're responding to that is huge. And I think that that's the same thing that we have to deal with, right? Are we going to be the one that we have all this stuff, right? We have all this knowledge about God and Jesus and how to live life and how to walk through hard things and how to solve problems because we have the wisdom of God. And are we the one that's going to be like, it's all for me so I can be better, so people can look at me and I can be promoted and I'll just give God the credit, like in the football games at the end, I just want to thank God and my mom. Right?
The generic
thanks. And I know some of those men do love Jesus desperately, so I'm not making light, but it's like, was it like a routine there for a while, right? It was just like the thing you did. And so, what are our standpoint? Are we hoarding those things? Are we looking, are we looking to say, I have something that can help and benefit this person. I want to come alongside you And there's no big prize competition, right? The prize competition is us laying down our lives and doing the opposite of what the world says. It's the racer that the kid falls down and he stops and picks up his race friend and they finish the race together. It's not about his win. It's about, oh, this kid got hurt. Let's go, right? We are in a battle of survival here on earth. It is. It's a survival against God's stuff and the evil and the sin that's here. The enemy, we know Jesus has already won, right? That's clear. Battle is done. The final victory is God's. We know that. We can walk in that. But the enemy doesn't want to admit the war's over. You know, I know that when there's a ceasefire and a truce and a war, it has to get to all the different places where everyone's fighting skirmishes. And the enemy has decided he's just going to keep fighting every skirmish that he can. And we're still dealing with the repercussions of sin and our intellect taking over. And people need us to be different. They need us to celebrate their wins and not be, oh, I can't believe so-and-so got the promotion, right? They need us to come alongside and rejoice with them when good things happen, to be there for them when they're hurting, give gifts of our time and not celebrate, they deserve that, right? They've been doing that, well, they just deserve all that they got, right? We need to listen to how God's leading and not promote ourselves. And that's what John was doing. He's like, I must be less of me. I'm going to decrease so God can increase in me. And that means emptying out all the stuff in us, that jealousy, the desire for more without God, right? We have to put that down and we have to say, God, I'm filling myself up with you, with your plans, where you want us to go, how you want to lead me. And I'm ready for that. So, question for you guys. What is something that you can do this week to help make less of you and more of God in your life? That decrease in yourself and increase of Jesus in you. Brainstorm together in your community. What are ways that are practical, something that you can do that will help switch that? Whether is that helping someone or there's a lot of ideas, but I don't want to go too many. But think about something that you can do so that you are making that transition, like physically thinking about acting out that so that it becomes more regular in your life. So this is the Zoe life. Life the way God intended it. Us living together in partnership, us looking to lift one another up, to celebrate wins, to just be together in this upside down new normal.
It's the loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, that God's put us together to celebrate in. Less of me and more of Jesus and more of what he wants. We're all in this life together, right? Like it or not, we are all in this world and we all get to live and do life alongside each other. And we need to be filled more and more with him so that we can do that, so that we can stand for truth. Because there are times when we need to speak truth, but we need to do it lovingly and with kindness. We need to be those people of wisdom when people need it. You know, Andrew quotes all the time that we're like the sons of Issachar. We know the times and what is coming to do. If we're spending time with God, he's going to be revealing those things to us. And people need that. They need that stability. They need words of love. And just hope that they can get through this. We're going to point people to Jesus and not ourselves. We aren't going to be their heroes. We're not going to be the rescuers. We're not going to come in and then like, okay, look, I did all these things, right? It's, look what Jesus did. I got to be a part of what Jesus is doing. And really mean that, right? And as we decrease and Jesus increases, and that's the way that it's supposed to be. Andrew, will you close us in prayer?
Jesus, we want to lift you up. We want to elevate you in our life to where you should be. And that means us getting small. That you are the hero of our story. Help us to live that. Help us to live the fact that you are the hero. You're the center of attention. And Father, we choose to trust you. We choose to live this out. We choose to honor people as we serve you. In Jesus' name, amen.